Studio 6 remodel, take 7.
Studio 54. That's what I got from when you said that.
Hey, Carlo. Okay, so we remodeled the studio for the 10th time, I think. Like
trying to get it right.
Like we said last episode, is way more difficult than we had expected, but we're really hoping that at least this setup, and we went and took the mixer and threw it out in the back alley. Me and Michelle are pretty pumped about this. What do you think?
Less is more. Less is more. It looks awesome. I think the lighting is better. Being able to look at you when I talk is even better.
Not doing that side thing.
Yeah, a little side. You want to see my chin.
Yeah.
So
nice. All right. Well, you have something coming from like the said I don't want to say sales side, but like the partnership side. So I think you have an awesome article, awesome topic article you've already written. I've seen you publish some stuff on this, but tell me, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, this is something that I think can pertain to just business in general. It doesn't have to be sales. It doesn't have to be even our industry in particular, but just like the vendor partnership, that relationship together. And I think it's a really good topic and something that's been disrupted since COVID. And I think COVID really highlighted how important it is to have a vendor that you call a partner, one that sits at the table. Like there are actually people still using that excuse, like supply chain is disrupted, supply chain is messed up. And that was real during COVID, where it's like full businesses went out of business because their supply chain couldn't meet a demand. And so like for us in our industry, we are the supply chain. And if we're not there, we can't open our doors. We cannot provide a service. What happens to our customers and our brands? I think that was a realization for a lot of people to really take a step back and say, you know what? It's not just a vendor. It's a partnership here.
And it's important. You can call it downstream or manufacturers or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, if that product doesn't make it to the client, then that reflects on the brand owner or the license holder or whatever the case may be. You're really one, and that downstream or supply chain is like the last baton in the race. What's that? The anchor?
The anchor.
Yeah. That's the anchor.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I think, like I said, COVID is one of the things that really highlighted that. So yeah, we'll talk about that value-based partnership. It kind of leads into value-based pricing as well. Why you can't be the cheapest on the block. I think that's what we're going to kind of name it, is like when being cheapest will bite you in the end. So going for cheapest.
Why can't you just compete on price?
I think a lot of people do. There's a lot of people that are competing on price. And I think it depends on what your expectation is. Like what is it you're trying to get out of that partnership? And I was saying, like, we've all learned or have heard that term, whether it was from grandpa or grandma, saying, you get what you pay for. And it's like, all right. And you don't know what that means until you experience it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, as you get older and you start to really understand what that means, what old grandpa was telling you, like, you get what you pay for. It's like, literally, how many times have we had to learn that lesson? Like, as any consumer, like, I've remodeled a few houses here and there. I've bought furniture, and sometimes I'm like, yeah,
cut a few corners.
Yeah, cut a few corners. I'm like, hey, my wife Nicole, you don't need to spend that much money on this couch. We'll just go to this place and get one for $300. And guess what? Yeah. That thing's cracked and crumbled after the first use.
Isn't movers like the best example of that? You know, like
100%.
Cutting a corner, and this is probably the best value you may get from us. But don't cut corners on a mover. Your stuff will not make it. Whether that is your business, your home, whatever it is, pay extra. Whatever the mover tells you, okay, this move is going to be $1,500. Be like, okay, I'll give you $2,000. Yeah.
That's a pro life tip, right there.
Pro life tip.
Yeah. I think that's going to lead perfectly into this. Like, why would a mover cost more on one side versus the one that's super cheap? Because they might have the items insured, right? And the other one might just be a couple guys in a truck that aren't insured. They'll give it to you for half the price, and maybe get your product to where it needs to be, or get your items to where it needs to be. But if one does harm something or break something, one's covered and one isn't. So I think that's like some of the points that we'll talk about. But the reason why you can't go cheap, it really has to start with, like, what is the outcome you're looking for. If cheap is okay, and it's okay if your items get broken along the way, fine. You know, that could work. So it really starts with that expectation, you know? But yeah, starting off with that, like, you get what you pay for, and then here are some reasons why, you know?
So as far as, you know, when you're met, or one of your teams are met with like, hey, I can get this done cheaper somewhere else, you know, how do you explain that? You know, how do you explain this like concept of like value-based partnerships to a client? Obviously would not be like, I'm going to educate you or like tell you why, or know my worth. I've never understood that one. So like how do you properly do that? And you know, if somebody right now is you know, quoting their client out, or if, you know, they're one of our clients is getting a new artist, and that, you know, artist says to them, well, actually, I could get this cheaper somewhere else. Like, well, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens a lot, and that happens for a lot of people in this industry. And like, the word educate could be a bad word. Sometimes. It's a dirty word. It's a dirty word. Yeah, you don't want to.
We're not in the business of educating.
Hey, client, let me educate you. Yeah, but it's definitely like, let me show you a different way, and why this could be different. You know, but the way I usually combat that is like, how important is this for you, the customer? What happens if this doesn't go right for you? And a lot of our clients are, you know, for this industry, they're reselling the service. They're not the end consumer. And typically that person that we're dealing with, you know, their job is on the line sometimes, whether it's an event, whether it's a show, whether it's a sporting event. So I usually say, like, what happens if that show, or if you miss that event, if you don't get the product there? Yeah.
What's the lost revenue?
What's the loss? Yeah. What happens? Is your job on the line if something like that happens?
Yeah.
And if the answer is, it is very important, and I must hit this deadline, or it's so important that this quality is on point. My customer, how many times have we heard, our customer is so picky. You know, if this is crooked, or if it's off, or if it's not perfect, you'll hear from us.
Yeah.
All right.
Then how could you be the cheapest?
How could you be the cheapest? If that's the expectation from you and your customer, how can your expectation be the cheapest?
Yeah, you know, something else that I think is in tandem with that is, you know, I feel like many people, you know, still, you know, like specifically on the merch side, and maybe this is just like products in general, you know, even when it comes to like retail products, like people have this misconception that like an elf just like makes all these products in China, you know, and then like, and then that elf wiggles, you know, their nose, and like Santa flies it from China over here. And like the entire life of an order, like, you know, the many departments, I don't know if I think we have like 12 departments that, you know, we consider like main departments. So 12 different hands have to apply value in order to get this to the finish line. And so, you know, when the expectation is like always just, I'm going to go with the absolute cheapest, I guess that would require us, you know, or whoever that factory is, to go the cheapest across the board as well. Cheapest machinery, cheapest people, cheapest tech, cheapest mic, whatever the case may be. You would have to have the same thing in order to hit that price and still be here. So, yeah, how do you basically tie those two together? How do you know, give like, okay, this is the life of an order, and, you know, somewhat break it down without getting into the details. And these are the reasons why that, you know, we want to build a fair partnership pricing model rather than just be the cheapest. Yeah.
I think it's about aligning with what the outcome is, what your expectation is, you know, like really asking that customer and understanding them on, you know, what is the worst case scenario if these things don't happen. And like what you're mentioning is you could cut corners, you know, like that. And I think anyone could, I think many people might, you know, and that's how you get to that cheaper price. But if it comes down to that product having to be a certain quality and having to hit a certain deadline, I mean, this industry is full of deadlines. Like if a deadline matters, I think you can go to anyone and say, how deadline driven is this industry? Pretty much every single order.
They're all event driven.
I need it today. I need it tomorrow.
Yeah.
If it's so deadline driven, you really can't cut those corners. You know, you have to make sure that the partner is set up for success. They do have the right machinery. They have the right staff. They train them. You know, like that's not cheap. That's not free. And we could all go over to Home Depot and whistle, and say, hey,
round up some people to come work
round up
today.
some people. I need some people to jump on press.
Yeah, Annabelle wouldn't let that happen.
Yeah,
right?
HR would not like that. But that's a corner that could be cut, right? Throw some unexperienced people on press. Throw some unexperienced people on a machine. And then there's safety issues. Do you want to be working with a company that has...
Then the print is off. I mean, it's hard enough. It's hard enough to keep every print perfect with very skilled operators. Better yet, bringing in complete fresh people every single time.
Exactly.
What might be interesting as kind of a follow up, and Michelle, maybe it's even like just like camera footage, is if we just go through each department and bring some level of like light, but to the... This is what goes into the life of an order. And we could just take something typical, like, like a screen printed, t-shirt, or an embroidered hat, or, something like that. Just like all these steps, and every part of the business that has to be executed perfectly in order to actually hit the date, open up the box, be thrilled with what was in the box, make sure it matched the mock, make sure it matched the photo approval, make sure it got there on time to the right location, all those things that go into, pulling off a successful order, and so often doing that in 24, 12, 48 hours.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool. I think it's almost like, you ever watch that show, How It's Made?
Yes, I love. Of course,
it's a great show.
Of course,
I think I watched
I'm a warehouse guy. Man, I love this show. I see bubble gum, bowling balls,
lighters. I saw one of how do you make a lighter? Like, what? You don't just go to the gas station, lighters there. Someone has to make that lighter, and there's this whole contraption and process to create it. I think it's just giving someone an understanding of what goes into it that adds to the value of what we do. All of us, whatever industry you're in, giving that behind the scenes, how it's made look would be really cool. Maybe that's a follow-up thing that we do. Yeah,
I think that'd be great. Anybody else that has any type of like topics, things that you're struggling with, whether it's with your team or, like Carlo came in, I love this information. We're going to definitely take this with us. And if you're having an issue with, a client engagement or an artist or a tour, anything like that, we're glad to at least bring, our, side of the story. And, it often is, on the manufacturing side, on the lower side, but, we also have some really cool stuff coming up. We're going to bringing on some brands. We're going to be bringing back product reviews as part of the podcast series, and be bringing the brands on with us as well. So anything else you want to hear from us, please drop a comment or chat us, DM, anything. We'll keep making them. Thanks, Carlo.
Thank you.